At 37,000 feet, a commercial jet lost everything: autopilot, navigation, cockpit screens. Pilots flew blind over the ocean and the ground lost track of the aircraft. But the first life-saving decision of the night wasn't made in the cockpit. It was calculated by artificial intelligence. So we asked the question the industry fears: can AI prevent crashes now? Commercial aviation is designed around trust. Trust that engines will run, trust that instruments will behave, and trust that pilots will always have reliable data to make decisions. But one night, that trust collapsed at 37,000 feet, leaving a fully loaded jetliner fighting for its life above a silent and indifferent ocean. Flight 719 departed like thousands of other flights do every day. A modern twin-engine widebody cruising smoothly toward its destination. The cabin lights were dim, most passengers resting, and the flight deck was in what pilots call the quiet window. High altitude, autopilot engaged, and almost no radio traffic. It should have been routine. It was anything but. Without warning, every pilot's nightmare arrived in 3 phases. First, a flicker across the cockpit displays, hardly enough to register. Then, a tremor in the autopilot logic, forcing the aircraft into a slight dip. And finally, the catastrophic moment, a blackout across the glass cockpit. Speed, altitude, engine data, navigation systems, every digital instrument went dark in perfect synchrony. The aircraft rolled left before the captain manually countered with instinct and muscle memory. The sky went black outside the windows, and the cockpit went black inside. Backup analog instruments glowed weakly, giving only skeletal information. Airspeed approximate, altitude fluctuating, heading uncertain. The pilots immediately realized what few civilians truly understand. Modern aircraft do not fly on wings alone. They fly through computers. Remove the computers, and the jet becomes a heavy, imperfect machine, limping forward on raw aerodynamics. Meanwhile, passengers sensed trouble. Drinks rattled as the aircraft wavered. A few seatbelt chimes sounded automatically, one of the last working systems. Flight attendants secured the cabin and silently braced for escalation. The command from the cockpit, "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated," revealed more tension than reassurance. On the ground, another problem unfolded. Air traffic control lost the aircraft's transponder signal. It still existed somewhere in the sky, but without position, reporting, altitude, or speed. In minutes, Flight 719 transformed from a routine flight into a vanishing data point on radar scopes. For controllers, this is the equivalent of losing a car in the middle of a highway at night, with no headlights, no radio, and no way to help. Pilots turned into aviators from another era, and flying a heavy jet at cruising altitude with limited reference. Yet even as the cockpit and control rooms scrambled, events were quietly shifting behind the scenes, because aviation is no longer supported by human analysis alone. Machines were listening. Machines were learning. And one system was already working on the problem faster than any team of engineers could gather in a war room. Back on the ground, in the airline's operational control center, the first warning flag lit up. A routine system, tasked with tracking thousands of flights, reported a critical failure aboard Flight 719. Initially, staff assumed it was a telemetry dropout. These happen occasionally. A burst of weather, a patch of dead satellite coverage, a glitch in transmission. But when secondary systems also failed to receive data, the word emergency began moving through departments. Engineers accessed technical dashboards. Dispatchers attempted radio calls. Controllers in 2 airspace sectors requested position verification. No response. In less than 5 minutes, an entire aviation infrastructure, built to monitor aircraft across continents, was blind to a jet full of people moving at nearly 500 knots. Traditionally, this is the moment when human expertise takes the lead. Pilots fight for control, controllers protect airspace, engineers check maintenance history. But technology has quietly changed that landscape. Airlines today run advanced support systems capable of analysis beyond human pace. Embedded inside one such system was a predictive engine powered by artificial intelligence, an AI that had studied millions of data points, from mechanical malfunctions to real crash investigations. As Flight 719 slipped into uncertainty, the AI received streams of partial telemetry that bled through the failure. Irregular engine temperature, erratic fuel calculations, cabin pressure trending slightly downward. To a human, these were confusing fragments. To the AI, they were a pattern. Within 60 seconds, it generated a diagnosis probability. Multibus electrical failure affecting avionics displays, likely triggered by a secondary power conversion fault. The system instantly cross-checked known emergency procedures, past failure profiles, and aircraft fleet history. It identified a slim but critical course of action. The plane needed to descend to denser air, lighten pilot workload, and divert to a long runway within a controlled approach environment. But the AI could not speak to pilots directly. Regulations do not permit it. Instead, its computed recommendations were routed to dispatchers, humans who barely understood how fast the machine was processing the scenario. A dispatcher reading the output relayed the first short instruction to ATC. Advise Flight 719 to descend to 22,000 feet. It sounded routine. It was anything but. The cascade continued. Speed reduction, heading change, divert to an emergency-capable airport. Pilots followed instructions. They did not know those instructions originated from a system capable of simulating outcomes in seconds. Yet every decision increased DS. This moment was historic. A jetliner in trouble was making decisions supported by artificial intelligence, not to fly itself, but to rescue a situation spiraling toward disaster. And the passengers, still staring into the dark sky, had no idea a silent digital brain was helping chart their path home. As the airplane descended, the truth of the situation became clearer. Flying at high altitude without avionics was terrifying but survivable. Bringing a crippled aircraft down safely was a far greater challenge. Pilots began preparing for what they hoped would be a controlled arrival, relying on partial instruments, intuition, and fragments of guidance relayed from the ground. Inside the cockpit, workload peaked. The captain worked the controls while the first officer monitored the last remaining readouts and disposable charts. The autopilot was dead. Every adjustment to pitch and roll required manual effort. Air turbulence at lower altitude rocked the aircraft, adding chaos to precision. The crew initiated a dark cockpit protocol designed to manage major electrical failures. They tried resets in sequence, hoping to restore power buses. Panels flickered but stayed unresponsive. At this point, some crews may consider a diversion far away or hold altitude to troubleshoot. But the AI's calculated recommendation to descend and divert immediately was proving sound. Down below, dispatch systems continued feeding advisories based on real-time weather, runway length, traffic, and terrain. The AI identified the nearest airport with a suitable ILS, instrument landing system, and clear meteorological conditions. It also flagged mountains in approach paths, recommending headings that avoided terrain during descent, a detail that, under stress, humans sometimes miss until the final moment. As clouds thickened, visibility dropped to almost zero. Here, digital navigation would normally guide the approach. But with degraded systems, the pilots relied on raw radio signals and dead reckoning, airmanship in the purest form. At 1,000 feet above ground, the cabin was silent except for the whine of engines struggling against drag. Passengers gripped armrests. Flight attendants braced in their jump seats. The pilots still could not be entirely sure of altitude accuracy. Any misjudgment could mean undershooting into terrain or overshooting far past the runway. Finally, the fog parted. Faint runway lights glimmered through moisture. The captain pushed the aircraft toward the threshold. The landing was crude but controlled. Hard touchdown bounce, then wheels slammed down again, biting into the asphalt. Reverse thrust engaged manually, and the aircraft decelerated fast. Only then, rolling to a stop on the emergency taxiway, did the cabin erupt in relief. After a blackout that could have ended in tragedy, Flight 719 was safe. For the pilots, the exhaustion was overwhelming, but the deeper story was still hidden. They assumed dispatchers used checklists, aviation manuals, and teamwork to offer guidance. They did not yet realize that every instruction they received had been filtered, shaped, and accelerated by artificial intelligence. The machine had not taken control. It had not flown the airplane. But it had done something just as important: buying time, reducing risk, and helping humans make the right decisions in the right order. Hours later, as maintenance crews inspected the aircraft and passengers continued their disrupted journeys, the operational truth emerged. Analysts studied the timeline of the incident and discovered that standard human workflows could not have processed the emergency fast enough. The airline's newly integrated AI engine had assembled flight risk calculations, weather models, airport suitability, and historical emergency profiles in under 90 seconds. A human team would have needed at least 15 minutes, an eternity during a cascading systems failure. This single fact forced uncomfortable questions across the aviation industry. If artificial intelligence could assist decision-making faster, more accurately, and with broader context than trained teams, how should aviation evolve? Should AI be expanded inside dispatch? Should it be allowed to propose cockpit checklists? One day, should it even be allowed to interface directly with pilots? Regulators are cautious. Aviation is conservative by design because changes affect millions of lives, yet the pressure is mounting. AI systems today can already detect mechanical faults before they happen by analyzing patterns in engine vibration and temperature. They can forecast fatigue risk by combining flight scheduling data with biometrics. They can simulate diversion scenarios faster than any flight planner and predict how weather systems will evolve. In the near future, AI might prevent runway incursions, recommend go-arounds before pilots decide, or catch instrument misreads that lead to controlled flight into terrain. It can even challenge human assumptions, something no checklist can do. But one truth stands firm: pilots are not becoming obsolete. Instead, their roles are sharpening. They move from being dogmatic control operators to high-level decision-makers, supported by the machine intelligence below them. The emotional stability, intuition, and leadership required in emergencies remain purely human capabilities. The night Flight 719 fought for survival marked a tipping point. It demonstrated that aviation safety no longer depends only on what happens inside the flight deck. It depends on an ecosystem, humans and algorithms working together in a loop of real-time intelligence. So, can artificial intelligence prevent crashes now? The honest answer is evolving. AI will not stop every failure. It cannot rescue every scenario. Aviation, like life, carries risk. But tools that learn faster than humans, that never tire, never panic, and never forget lessons, those tools are rewriting what is survivable. One night, a failing aircraft lived because pilots fought with skill while AI guided from the shadows. That is the future unfolding. Not machines replacing aviators, but machines standing beside them, making sure more passengers walk off planes alive. And one day, passengers may never know that a catastrophe was avoided because a silent system, running at light speed, outthought danger before the cockpit even knew it existed.